Hello everyone, welcome to the ninth episode of Choosing the Red Pill with Rajesh and Omer. Today we are going to discuss a very pertinent topic right now. We all know that the Indo-China relations are at a strategic standpoint at this moment, and the Indian government is trying to preserve national interests at the same time by using multiple methods. So, in today's time, there are 58 or 59 Chinese apps that have been banned. So, today we are going to discuss the strategic standpoint as well as the freedom of expression and democracy, and all these topics will be combined into one. We have Saransh Joshi with us and Fahad Zuberi. They have been vocal on these issues, so I welcome both of you. Thank you
Hi,
for
Umar.
joining
Hi,
in.
Rajesh.
Hi.
Thank you for calling us.
Hi Fahad and hi Saransh. Welcome to both of you on choosing the red pill. This is our first time together, and welcome both of you, and let's have a great conversation today.
Yeah.
As Omer suggested, the topic is about the Chinese apps that have been banned. 59 of apps that have been banned by Indian government, including TikTok and some other apps. Now, my first question to both of you, which is the same question to both of you, is for our viewers, it will help us understand your what is your position on it. So, Saransh, I would ask you the first question: Why are you against? Why are you in favor of this ban? And then again, same question passes on to Fahad. Why are you opposing the ban? So, Saransh first, please.
Hi everyone. And there are actually a plethora of reasons. There are a lot of reasons why I'm in favor of this particular ban. Personally, like all of you know me, and I am not really in favor of censorship usually. But I would like to make an exception in this case, and I'll elucidate why I am choosing such a stand for this issue. The first reason, the prime and the first and foremost reason that comes to my mind is that I do not see TikTok as merely an app. I see it as spyware. I see that it has garnered concerns not just inside India but across the world, and there are lawsuits that have been filed in America and several other countries, and Indonesia too had banned it. And this move has probably emboldened other countries too to at least review and address and ask ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, to address the security concerns pertaining to it. I'd like to add a few other reasons also that TikTok pretty much uh, has now become a part of the Indian ethos in a very small time. Indians have internalized TikTok, so it's TikTok India is very different from TikTok America or TikTok Europe. So a lot of problems that are very unique to TikTok India also emerge here. Those problems do not exist in TikTok USA or TikTok Europe. I'll talk about that later. But there's actually more than one reason why I seem to be slightly in favor of the government's decision to ban all these apps, especially TikTok. And I can, of course, feel the impact. And there seems to be a very popular sentiment in favor of this step, as far as I know and as far as I understand. So I'd like to begin with that.
Okay, thank you, Fahad. Why are you opposing the ban?
Well, I'll start with the more abstract reasons and not so
Okay, can
much
you be a
on
little
the.
louder, please?
Yeah, okay. So I'll start with the more abstract sort of a groundwork for my argument, and not so much on the content of the app, which Saransh is quite right about. That these are apps controlled by private agents who might be located anywhere in the world, and they are prone to being spyware. So I completely agree with Saransh there. However, let's be very honest about the context in which this ban comes in. Ravi Shankar Prasad, he tweeted on 29th of June saying, for safety, security, defense, sovereignty, and integrity of India, and to protect data and privacy of the people of India, the government has banned 59 mobile apps. Jai Hind. So just to begin with, like the brand of nationalism that is being sold to us at present, which inherently is comprised of hating enemy nations and less about embracing the diversity of the country, is unacceptable to me, and I think it should be unacceptable to anyone who has reason, who believes in the project of enlightenment. That is one. So it's because the context is so nationalistic, the groundwork to support such a move does not exist for me. Secondly, I can't see how this ban really affects safety, security, defense, and sovereignty. I mean, we are continuing our trade with China, and we live in this sort of an overconfidence about our economy, where we think that we'll ban something and it is going to really impact how a foreign power behaves. So in these very strict sort of groundwork on many abstract ideas is why I oppose the ban. I am in general not in favor of banning anything in a democracy, and those things might be prone to misuse as well, as Saransh rightfully pointed out. But banning also gives the state a lot of agency to really stop anything that goes against their worldview, and that in itself fundamentally is something that should be unacceptable in a free society.
Okay, so I think Fahad Zuberi has brought in a point about, first of all, the nationalistic groundwork, and secondly, how banning does not necessarily translate into changing the behavior of an enemy nation. So I think I would just put across this question to Saransh that uh, does your support for the ban extend to the trade as well? Because when we look at the ban on the apps in isolation, how much impact will it create actually on the relations between India and China? And also, if we do you think that there is any limit to it? There is any end to these banning in a world that is becoming more globalized when it in respect to trade? So, how do you look at this whole thing?
I'm going to answer that in detail. So first of all, I was just before this session started, I came across this NDTV article wherein TikTok is estimated to have go through a loss of $6 billion because of the ban in India. Because India is apparently the largest market outside China for ByteDance for TikTok. Around 611 million downloads happened in the first quarter of 2020 alone in India. Mm, That number is apparently higher than the entire 4 quarters of 2019. So, in case of India, TikTok was penetrating within the Indian demographic, within the young people, at a staggering rate. So, of course, the first and the foremost thing is that it does definitely have a very strong impact on this company ByteDance. They were going for an IPO. They're planning on an IPO, but I think they are going to shelve it now because since India has banned it, and apart from that, America is also looking into it, and there's also a lawsuit filed, I believe it's in California, and this single move, I believe, will have a domino effect. And as far as Chinese companies are concerned, all of us know that they are the invisible hands, the extended arms of the CCP. The CCP is an evil force. I'm sure everyone agrees on that part. The CCP is an evil force that the world has not seen in a long time. So I would say after World War II, we are finally nearing an enemy that has a lot of characteristics of Nazis embedded within them. And, at a time when we're finding shipments of hair coming out from the Uyghur camp in Xinjiang, so there has to be some. I mean, the ground sentiment is that there should be some action, some reasonable action against China. The government might have capitalized on it by banning TikTok and other apps. And I do believe that a number of things need to be done apart from that. I mean, this is not some one stop solution, but I would just say a step in the right direction. It's not a one stop solution for attacking China. It doesn't work that way with China. China, being a $14 trillion economy, is pretty self sufficient. Its economy is almost 5 times that of ours. And we have a very huge trade deficit with them that's skyrocketing. A trade deficit that ballooned after 2005, 2006, I guess. But policy experts from that era opined that we need to increase our trade with China, even if our deficit balloons, even if we import more, export less, because trade will act as a deterrent. It will act as a buffer whenever situations escalate at the border. So there was this overwhelming opinion from all the quarters that no matter what happens, it will be business as usual with China, and that will apparently save us from the cost of escalation on the borders. But apparently, that wisdom seems to have failed to some extent, with China continuing with its aggression on the border, on multiple borders actually. So there needs to be a paradigm shift in how we approach the Chinese issue. So in that context, I support the ban as just a primary step. And the second, people say that you can access it through VPNs or maybe any other measure. But I'd just like to emphasize the point that the user base of TikTok is predominantly rural, is predominantly not tech literate. And so banning TikTok here is a substantial detriment because the people who use TikTok aren't necessarily college going kids from posh families, posh colonies in urban India. But they're farmers, they're laborers, they're electricians, they're plumbers, they're carpenters, they're people from the remotest part of this country who downloaded this app, who probably love this app but do not understand the implications of it. So, if TikTok is going through a $6 billion loss in a single quarter, I think it is a huge thing. It does send the right message. Like just as somebody would point that this is nothing in comparison to what the Chinese economy is. But the thing is, in the Dark Knight, the Joker burns that pile of cash after looting it. So you can't say that you'll get that cash printed in a mint in some minutes. So why did he burn the cash? He burned the cash because he wanted to send a message. India banned these apps because India wanted to send a message that it cannot be business as usual with China. It is not the ban, but the underlying message behind the ban that is very important. For the first time, India is not being pusillanimous in its approach in 2 decades against China. The Chinese, frankly, did not expect this. In my opinion, they did not expect this. So it came as a shock to them. Just like the ban on Huawei in US and the arrest of the executive, it came as a shock to CCP. This move also came as a shock because they seriously didn't expect India to do this. So I do agree that the government is capitalizing way more on this. They're trying to sell it as a one-stop solution, as a panacea of all the evils related to the Chinese problem. But I only see it as one step that is in the right direction, which should be followed up by several measures. Of course, India-China trade is huge. The deficit is huge, and we'll have to work out a lot of ways. And around, I heard that around 100 companies were planning to move out of China post the pandemic. But I believe only 4 or 5 of them would come to India. Rest would just go to Vietnam, Thailand, Bangladesh, elsewhere. So that's altogether a bigger issue. But as far as the ban is considered, I don't think anything there's anything wrong with it. It's touching a raw chord with CCP, and I like it. And this is precisely the reason why I'm liking it.
So,
Okay, great.
uh,
There's a wonderful point that Saransh brought in, and he thinks that banning TikTok and other apps does bring a strategic advantage to India, or at least it's a good start. It sends the right signal in what we want to do. Yeah, just a second, Fahad.
Yeah.
And so, so in that context, I want to ask Fahad. Fahad, there is something that you need to say to Saransh. You can say that, but also I want to ask you also a question that in the situation when Saransh says that it sends the right signal and it's a good start that India has banned TikTok and the other apps, even when there is a huge trade imbalance between India and China. In your perspective, what do you think are the other options? Okay, if not the ban, then what are the other options in which India could respond to China? So answer to that question, and then you can respond to Saransh as well. or maybe Saransh answer reply to Saransh first and then answer this question.
Yeah, I'll just respond to Saransh. I think Saransh very rightfully put the discourse which the current government has taken up, which is burning the cash to send a message. It is symbolic, and I believe we are living in this sort of times where policy and where actual action does not matter as much as creating an illusion, creating a simulation of say of doing something. I mean, it is merely a message, I believe, not so much to China, more to the people of India, that we are responding to China. But there is a catch there. What exactly are we responding to? The PM denied that there was any incursion. So that is again, living in this world where one can send any piece of misinformation. And the people of India, apparently dancing to the tune of nationalism, are ready to lap it up. But let's be very clear about the impact that we are going to have. India merely accounts for 2.3% of China's exports. And it is not so much the import, what we import from other countries, that hurts them. It is more of what we export. If we stop what we export to them, which is, by the way, the largest thing that we import from China is electrical machinery and nuclear reactors. And if you come to the digital space also, I mean, Paytm, the company that in a rather boastful ad during the demonetization supported the prime minister, has over 60% of its shares located in China. So I totally, and the way I look at it, banning TikTok, and I'm talking about TikTok particularly because Saransh is talking about TikTok, but my argument spans over all of the application. But banning TikTok is a very convenient way where TikTok is used by the people who usually don't have a voice, a strong political voice. One second, you can ban such an app, and therefore, like Saran said, send a message to the people that we are actually doing something. Now, coming to the alternative, I'll be very honest. I'm not a policy expert, or not an international policy expert, but I believe that any sort of a sanction that you put on a country eventually ends up hurting its people, while the problem arises from the group of people who are ruling those people in the country. So a more constructive, maybe diplomatic solutions to this, which would have actually impacted the trade at a point where it was impacting their national resources, I suppose, and not applications. We live in a digital world where banning applications can send a message to people as if we are doing something because of how invested we are in the virtual world. So if we look at the data, for example, I mean, we import something like 34% of our electrical machinery from China. Our entire pharma, the place that me and Saransh both are sitting in, Gujarat, has the highest investment from China. We are the largest and the most robust pharma industry. We are called pharmacy of the third world. And we import a lot of our material from China. And those are generic drugs. These are your Combiflam and your ibuprofen, which I don't think we can do without. So let's be very clear. When it comes to economics, China has a leverage in the world right now. And it has a leverage over United States, let alone leverage over India. So other ways of dealing with it would have been, like you had someone who had been an IFS officer. He would be a better person to answer that question. But I don't think banning is the way to go about it. And it also creates a very dangerous precedence where we can say that, we can go on banning apps without having the conversation about freedom and liberty of the people.
Okay, so I will quickly add on to Fahad Zuberi's point and put a question also that related to how huge trade we have with China, and especially the pharma and the electrical. That is a fact, of course. But I would quickly, before going to Saransh, I also have a quick question to Fahad Zuberi that, like I read that there is at least a $6 billion loss that China has suffered because of these apps ban. And I don't know how numbers may differ. I'm not very sure on the numbers, but even if that number is minuscule, and so don't you think that it is a good reason to start, and even if it is sending a message, I think if even if the amount is minuscule, does it not uh, entail a good start to as a backlash against China, don't you think? Before I go to Saransh.
Well, China sort of incurred on our borders. That is what the satellite imagery and a lot of sources from within the army said, although the Prime Minister denies it. They killed our soldiers, and I don't think not using some apps is an appropriate response or even a start. I think it is more about, like Saran said, sending a message, but I don't think that message is towards China. That message is more towards the people of India who are being rallied behind a brand of nationalism. That is that Premchand called leprosy of the civilization.
Okay, Saransh,
Yeah.
when it comes to like he mentioned India's own people, right? So there is a narrative going on that there are millions of people who are voiceless and who used to express themselves through these apps, and they are very useful. And India does not have many of their alternatives either, very good alternatives also. So do you think that before banning these apps, there should have been alternatives, or India should invest more in these alternatives? And do you think there is any willingness towards it by the Indian government to give the India's platform?
Yeah, this is a very good and very pertinent, very relevant question that you asked. Everyone exactly pointed out to this. We suddenly ban apps one day, then there is a huge base and a lot of them who actually earn from them, especially the TikTok influencers, just like Instagram influencers. They are apparently half jobless because of a certain ban. So I was reading up on this because this question occurred to me too. But around 1 crore people have downloaded several Indian alternatives to the TikTok within a week. So within a week alone, people joined and switched to other apps. Around 1 crore people. Of course, the number will rise exponentially in the coming days. But the good thing about Play Store, the good thing about the digital world is that unlike the real world where you might see monopolies in certain sectors, oligopolies in certain sector. In the digital space, in Play Store, there is a lot of variety. There is a lot of apps that you can choose from, and there are a lot of platforms that you can develop. So, I think in the long run, this is not going to be a major issue because once the uh, traffic, consumer traffic comes, the apps start evolving. So I do remember in that context there was an app called musical.ly. So musical.ly was actually more popular than TikTok in India. What exactly ByteDance did was gauge the popularity of musical.ly, and then they bought it. They bought it and integrated it with TikTok. Once that app was integrated with TikTok, the popularity of TikTok app in India and Europe and USA skyrocketed because musical.ly was the preferred app in USA as well as India for those shorter lip sync videos, for shorter videos. So the thing is, those apps come and go. They, the apps that begin early have a leverage, but it's not
So,
necessary.
Saransh, are you sure nobody will commit a suicide because of losing their followership on TikTok?
I'm not really sure. We'll find two or three cases like that. Some of them even concocted to suit a media headline, preferably by Jyoti Yadav of Print or Aishwarya Iyer from Quint, because I can understand their mindset. I believe they're just waiting for one or two deaths so that they can write their article that is in the drafts. It's already in the draft.
Okay. Saransh, Fahad raised an important point regarding freedom of speech of people. So yes, while you answered him about that this is largely used by people who don't have a voice, but he also raised a point about freedom of speech of people, and his point is that in a democratic country, this does not set a right precedence. So, but when it comes to choosing between individual freedoms versus national security, which one do you where would you stop? I mean, what is the restriction that you would put on individual freedom? Yes, all of us are generally not in favor of any bans or anything, but do you put a stop when it concerns to national security? Because there is another point is that the data that has been sent is sent to China. It uses it for surveillance and all that stuff. So and that's a national security matter as well. Fahad did make a point that this is only to send a message to the people of your own country to rally behind your brand of nationalism. But then there is a larger context also. These apps also actually collect their data, and these companies are controlled by Chinese state. These are not just private companies like US or Germany or wherever. These are Chinese state owned companies. Now, so would you stop would you be okay with putting the restrictions on individual liberties in India if the national security is concerned? That's my question to you.
Well, it's a very important question, and like you said, where do you actually stop? Where do you actually draw the line? So, uh, all of us, I believe, all four of us believe in the fact that the state should, unless in extraordinary circumstances or in difficult circumstances, the state should not intervene in such matters. They should not arbitrarily put bans. They should not be the arbitrators of what people consume in a normal, regular world, in normal, regular discourse. But uh, the situation here is pretty different. We're dealing with a China which is very, very powerful. It is not the China that was during the 1962 war. It is not Mao's China or Deng's China. We are dealing with aspiring superpower, which does not really have very good intentions and easily sees India as a rival. It is out to belittle, besmirch, and attack you. So this is, in my opinion, a very different circumstance, a very tough, or I would say a very, like I said, a very different, if not extraordinary circumstance. So I would make an exception here and prioritize national security over over the individual freedom to download the apps. Now, as far as the blockade is concerned, like Fahad said, that blockading something is not good. I mean, this is relevant and true in case of a food blockade, or in case of a weapon blockade, or in case you're blockading any commodities reaching the shore of another country. We are in this case not doing that. We are not blockading oil. We are not blockading food. We are not blockading weapons. We are not blockading steel or cement to China. We are merely putting a pass. We are putting a ban on certain digital apps. We are not doing something. We are not doing something tangible in that course. So we are not affecting the Chinese or Indian citizen in a manner that they cannot recuperate with, in a manner that they cannot cope up with. The problem with China is that China has taken this free pass. It knows that there are advocates of free speech, liberty in West, in India. It will try to use them. It will try to use that free speech in order to sneak in uh, uh, their companies, their propaganda method. Which is why you'll see that the Chinese will always be in favor of free speech, liberty, etc. They'll try to talk about social justice issues in the West, but when it comes to their own backyard, they turn a blind eye. So China has very well learned to leverage this, the fact that people in West and other parts of Asia value their freedom. So they've very effectively studied us, and they very effectively know that we'll advocate for something like this, and hence they made these dubious applications. Uh, will consume anyhow. So it's very clever of
Okay.
them to come something like. But then again, ordinary circumstances require extraordinary solutions. They're solutions that you wouldn't do. Else we would. Well,
Okay, so I think Fahad Zuberi is writing something he wants to respond to Saransh. But before that, I will quickly add to what Saransh has said and to what Rajesh asked the question, my own perspective on that. See, in this particular case, the I don't think that the individual freedom versus the national security is a valid binary in this particular case because the crackdown is not on the particular expression. If a person wants to sing a song, he can sing a song. But I think the crackdown is on the particular platform that compromises the data of the people to an enemy state. So I think the problem is with the platform, and if India has similar platforms, so that person can express the same thing in that particular Indian version of it. So I think both the things can happen. A person can express himself without sending his data to any state. So that is what my take is on that. And now if we move to Fahad Zuberi and let him respond to what Saransh was saying.
Yeah, while we are actually talking about, alternatives, like Umar, you also just in your last comment talked about what other things can people do. Uh, I think it is a valid concern about data privacy, and I think if we have to really chart out the world, United States is no innocent saint on spying on its own people. For example, and I would really support any regulation that goes into that effect. As a matter of fact, after the ban, the head of TikTok India, he issued a statement saying that we are complying with every Indian law when it comes to data privacy. And as we have seen with the Aadhaar or with the latest Arogya Setu app, the current government doesn't seem to be a very the knight in shining armor when it comes to privacy. But I will say something else about national security and individual freedoms. A very pertinent question that we should ask ourselves right now is, who is to bear the brunt of national security or a failure of national security? Let's say there happens a border skirmish somewhere, and isn't that is shouldn't it be the fundamental principle of, let's say, the Ministry of Defense or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to not let the brunt of that skirmish come to the people of India or come to the people of its own state? Shouldn't they aren't they tasked with guarding us from these dangers that are coming from outside? So I don't understand how, taking the freedom and right of the people of India to consume content through a particular platform, which, by the way, they might have built their influence over the years. So it is not simply a matter of alternative. And we, in this discussion also, I don't think we have gone anywhere beyond sending a message, because I don't think this is a strategic, like you often are saying. I don't think this is a matter of strategic advancement in any way. Saransh rightfully said it is like the Joker burning the cash. It does not do anything effective. It sends a message, but at what cost? Are the people of India to bear the brunt of what happened on the border, which, by the way, the Prime Minister denies? I don't think so. And one more point, you can see the steel and all the exports that we do. We also export a lot of minerals to China. We have around somewhere around 15% of our exports are to China in the form of minerals and ores. Those are the things that would really impact a country's economy, and that in the long run also ends up impacting our economy, and that is a valid point. But those are the places where we can really exercise some leverage, gain some diplomatic strong arm over the other countries, and then figure out a solution there, rather than coming to the digital space. I very well understand why the party came to the digital space to fight this war, because that is the only space that matters in public opinion right now, and Saransh is the perfect person to understand that. And so I and with the data privacy, again, I would say you can regulate it. You should regulate it. I was against this sort of this sort of decree where everyone was to download the Arogya Setu app, when the backend of the app was not clear about its data privacy and the third party sharing. So all of that is to be taken into concern, and we can very well regulate it, and I think we should regulate it to make our citizens actually more free. But I don't think the context in which this ban has come has anything to do with the content that was there, that Saransh has written in his piece about TikTok. Neither do I think it has anything to do with individual data privacy, because I really don't think by the discourse of this government they are anywhere concerned about private data of its citizens.
No, I don't think they are concerned about private data, privacy of individual data. What they are concerned about is individual data going abroad, and especially to China. That's what the concern is, and that's where the national security comes in. I brought in individual security, individual freedom matter, because you brought the freedom of speech in it, and so I completely agree. It has nothing to do with freedom of speech. Government cannot stop. And as Omar said earlier, government is not stopping anybody to express themselves. They are just taking away the platform. People have the right to still have the right to express themselves on any other platform that they want to
But they
freely.
don't have the right to download that platform and use it. They don't have the
Why
right to
should they?
choose
I mean,
from this.
why should they? Do Chinese people ask that we should have the right to download Google or Snapchat? No, they
Oh,
don't.
Rajesh bhai, that's a very low bar to set in terms of democracy. I mean, are you going to set the bar of a
No, I'm not
communist
talking
state?
about. I'm not comparing China and India in democracy and communism. What I'm saying is every country has a set of principles on which it governs itself, and those, like for example, tobacco. I mean, we might shout on the rooftops that tobacco is bad for health, tobacco is bad for health. But when you ban the tobacco, I mean, let's say government bans tobacco companies, which it doesn't. But if it does, will we be shouting again the same ways that it is against our freedom of speech or freedom of expression to smoke? No, we won't, because inherently we know smoking is bad, so we will compromise with it.
No,
So government,
I would say it is
wait
my
a sec,
right
wait a
to
sec,
smoke
wait a sec.
tobacco
Let me
and
please
get
complete.
cancer.
Let me please complete. What I'm saying is, government is not taking away anybody's freedom of speech. They have only taken away the platform. Nobody has a right to have a platform. You understand that? Government is not bound to give you a platform.
The government is not bound to give me a platform, but to take a platform away from me, it actually encroaches upon my right to choose from a series of platforms that are available for me to download from Google Play
I
Store.
think
And
I think more
by
than
reducing these platforms, we also create this precedence where they can tomorrow say that I'm going to cut down on this platform if the content on that platform is of a similar nature, or
Yeah,
let's
absolutely.
say
Why not?
it
Every
comes from
country
some
has
other
their own
power.
laws regarding this. I mean, there is no universal law. Google Play is not a universal thing. I gave an example of China for the same reason, that if there are certain apps China does not allow to be downloaded on Google or iOS or iTunes or whatever. Similarly, all other countries have their own values, principles,
However,
laws, and everything.
is that justified by China?
I don't care. What I'm saying is America can do it, India can do it,
No, it is an
basis their
important question.
own system, basis of their own system of governance and values and principles. Why not? For example, if there was a child porn, should we allow it? No, we won't. We won't
No,
allow such an app.
that has something to do with a strong encroachment upon someone else's rights who cannot give consent. That is a different
No,
thing.
it's not. No, no,
I
no.
think
It's the viewers
Saransh
are
has
not.
something to add.
Wait a sec. Wait a sec. The viewers are not children. Viewers are adult. If they want to watch child porn, should they be allowed
But we
to
cannot
download
make
such an
child
app?
porn without engaging children in sexual activity on camera, can we?
Please, let's not get into there. I am talking about government action. I'm not talking about what children did, who made those videos. Forget about that. That was made in US. Forget about that. Should our government allow download of such an app? Because if they don't, it infringes on the freedom of certain section of people.
No, that does not that does not match with the idea of universal human rights that we have, and there is a universal law. I mean, post the Project of Enlightenment,
There
we
is no
have a
universal
universal.
right on government allowing all kind of apps to be downloaded.
No,
There
no,
is
no.
no
There is.
universal right like that.
There is a universal declaration of human rights which we judge each country by. If we are judging China, we cannot say that China runs its own system and therefore it has its own laws and
That's what I'm
governance, and
saying.
therefore
There is a charter of United Nation Human Rights, United Declaration of Human Rights, and there are steps in that. There are points in that. Where is that app? Where is that app thing in that charter? Nowhere.
no constitution in the world will have anything about apps. These are abstract notions which are which are articulated in the form of right to liberty, right to life, freedom of speech. As a matter of fact, sexuality does not feature in these things, but we talk about sexuality when we talk about right to homosexual life. We talk it based on article 19, 20, 21, which are abstract notions.
I'd like to weigh in here. I would like to talk about this. Since you guys mentioned something about pornographic and child pornography in particular, I'd like to remind everyone that TikTok was first banned by Madras High Court in March or April 2019. It was banned for 25 days. And the reason that the High Court gave was that there is absolutely no moderation on TikTok, which exposes children, people below the age of 13, to
Yes.
pornographic content, to steamy content that people below the age of 13 should not be ideally consuming. So the total absence or total lack of moderation on TikTok, which as a result made it into a semi-pornographic site, semi-pornographic social media platform, and thus exposed a lot of young people, uh, not just young people, not just teenagers, but young children, to the content that they shouldn't ideally be viewing. So the first ban in that context, and after that, TikTok, I think TikTok renegotiated something, and this has happened in, I think, in some state of America also. This is the reason being given that the lack of moderation and the kind of pornographic content that is accidentally uploaded on the site and can't be easily removed. It's the reason behind setting up certain restrictions of this app or totally banning it. Indonesia banned it for a different reason for some time. I think it was blasphemy, something against Islam, and then because of that they banned it. And then TikTok, Indonesia renegotiated things, and they promised that they won't allow blasphemous content on TikTok in certain countries. But the larger point, the elephant in the room that we are still not talking about is the impact of TikTok on Indian society. The Indian society is fairly different from America. It's very, very different from Europe or even rest of Asian countries. The impact of is extensively negative in India. There was a riot in Gujarat between Rabaris and Thakurs because of a TikTok video. Just the last week, there was a video of two drunk Dalit guys desecrating a Mahadev, Shiv Mandir, and that apparently caused a bit of tension in Veraval area. And then those guys were made to apologize, and they made another video where they apologized for their misconduct for entering a religious place and desecrating it. But the reason those guys gave in their defense was that we were drunk and we wanted more views on TikTok. We wanted to create something sensational. We wanted more coverage. We wanted more followers on TikTok. The reason that they gave for desecrating a religious place on purpose was that they wanted more followers on TikTok. So TikTok and PUBG, they have a very huge impact on the Indian psyche that is not studied at all. Nobody has made an effort to do an empirical study on the impact that it is having on Indians, their family life, their social life, between communities. TikTok Tamil Nadu is full of explicit caste-based hateful content that would ideally be removed from Facebook, from Twitter. Something like that cannot stay on any American social media platform after reporting, but nothing happens on TikTok India. There are Thewars, Banyars, and other caste people who constantly threaten, abuse people from other castes, who provoke violence, and this has become a regular occurrence in certain states. So it's promoting intercaste mm, violence. It's promoting a lot of enmity between clans and castes. It's also promoting a lot of enmity between Hindus and Muslims. Even the content that is uploaded on TikTok, especially a lot of Muslim boys from certain districts in UP that do not have a very high literacy rate, and they're far underdeveloped. So I saw their role during Delhi riots. There's a lot of provocative stuff on TikTok that can incite passion among people, that can cause that can cause loss of lives, and the lack of moderation absolutely makes it a very dangerous app during times like this. So these are issues, and these are the larger that's the these are larger issues that nobody's talking about in case of TikTok. I don't think TikTok has made any comment, TikTok India, regarding this. And in my opinion, this makes the ban very, very necessary, and it makes this ban a good step because TikTok India was never going to do anything about it.
Okay, I think Saransh brought in what sort of effect TikTok was having on the Indian society, and why it was important to regulate it also in his viewpoint. And I would just quickly add my sort of concluding remark before I ask Fahad Zuberi to give his concluding remarks. I would say that since we are discussing about the ban from a perspective of freedom of expression, or why is it important in a democracy, and whether it is about sending a message, And so I think that the same thing would happen. For example, if in some time India goes to war with United States, for example, same thing might happen to the United States platforms we are using. Maybe because it is about WhatsApp and Facebook that we are using, we are sending our data to the United States, I think. So, and if we go to war with the United States, we might have to the Indian government might ban those platforms as well, and we might debate it in a different context. So I think it all boils down to the recent skirmish and the clash between India and China, and it is not nothing at all but sending a message. So like we have concluded. So I would ask Fahad Zuberi to give his remarks.
Yeah, I'll just briefly respond to what Saransh just said. I believe all four of us on this platform right now are against things like IPC 295A, which is essentially the blasphemy law in India. Whatever Saransh you just said sounds like someone who would justify that also. For example,
No, 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 no.
uh,
I think what he's
because
not he's fine with them desecrating the temple. He's not against that. His point was why the reason that they gave why they desecrated the temple.
I
The
understand.
Exactly.
reason they gave was that they wanted to gain TikTok followers.
However, that
I
is
think that
that
was his
is
point.
However, that is not unique to, let's say, the Chinese app. We have seen instances on Facebook, we have seen instances on Twitter, which is highly used by the political parties, as a matter of fact, to polarize the society. I mean, the latest tweet by Sambit Patra about the killing of an old man in Kashmir, it was quite in bad taste, and it could hurt a lot of people and hurt a lot of sentiments. Apart from that, Saransh, you were talking about the porn ban, the not the porn ban, but you were talking about how certain people are exposed to this indecent content. So for that, in that context, are you for the porn ban that was kept up by the High Court?
Not really. The pawn ban does has nothing to do with China, which I consider to be a formidable rival of the Indian state. The second thing is that people who access porn are technically from a certain demographic that will also somehow learn about VPNs. I cannot say the same in case of TikTok because even my
I
maid.
don't. Sorry, Saransh. I don't think porn has any demographic. 99.9% people watch the porn.
So
हाँ,
There's no
लेकिन
basically, what you were what you
demographic
were
of porn.
VPN भी पकड़ ही लेंगे. That
basically
also.
what you were criticizing was the content and not so much the platform, because one can consume that content from any platform
No,
whatsoever.
I was criticizing the lack of moderation on that platform.
And i am
One
i
is
am with you.
uploaded on Facebook also. One is
I am for
uploaded on
that. I
Twitter
am for
also.
that.
So that's the thing that Facebook and Twitter will act if there are certain number of reports against an indecent video, but TikTok India won't.
And I
TikTok
think a
India, in
moderation of
addition
that
to that,
sort would go a long way. I agree with you on that.
so TikTok India, in addition to that, is enabling radicalization in the Indian society that is already incredibly polarized at this moment. This was my biggest beef with TikTok. That given that it has a lot of users among the lower middle class, amongst the rural population, amongst the poor people, and amongst certain castes and communities that act as a clan, that act collectively, it is very easy for an enemy nation instigate people to commit trouble during a calamity, during the time of a war. So it is
Basically,
very
basically, Saransh is saying that certain demographic of people don't have so don't have awareness and information to act with their own volition. They are rather influenced by other people and then act, and those kind of people need to be stopped.
even our intelligence agencies found around, I believe, 3,000 to 4,000 videos during this Tablighi Jamaat incident. Those videos were not from India, but they were from outside India. But it seemed like they were from India, like from UP or Delhi, and they had content. They had people who were spitting, who were encouraging others to spit. So the impression that those TikTok videos created amongst the
Hmm.
majority community in India was that minority Muslim community is trying to spread corona.
Right.
But in
And
reality,
then
those videos
and then
were
there will
not.
be some people. Then there will be some Muslim people who will be influenced by that, and then there will be Hindu people who will be anti that. So ultimately, it starts up. big conversation. Nobody gains but TikTok actually.
So problem is the content basically, isn't it? Because we found similar videos on Facebook also.
No, no. Again, the lack of moderation, the total absence of it is the problem, in my
So
opinion.
I think that is something that I agree with Saransh on. However, I will just come back and another, the actual elephant in the room that we sort of digress from right now was the
Mhm.
context in which this ban comes. And as we have discussed, yes, it might be, in your opinion, it might be a message to China, but I don't think it is anything more than a message. So I'll just conclude
Yeah,
whatever
we
I
all
had to
agree that
say.
it's a symbolic message.
So I'll just conclude what I have to say. One, I don't think we are hitting China at any strong trade front by doing this. We are continuing our billions and billions of dollars of trade that we do with China, and for obvious reasons because they have economic leverage over us and economic leverage all around the world. I mean, the string of pearls is not something that we don't know, which is necessarily a circle of trade that we have. That India is actually claustrophobic inside. We are in a very tight space when it comes to China's circle of trade. They have ports all around us, very close to Port Blair also, and in foreign adversaries such as Pakistan as well. So I don't think we are really hitting them at anything that is substantial by this. What we are doing is we are creating a precedence about banning, which is extremely dangerous to a free society because, in the name of national security, which might not be happening as we saw, which might not be impacting the enemy nation in any way, but this brunt of national security to be falling on the citizens of a free nation, apparently a free nation, is something that we should stand against, in my opinion. And this precedence is extremely dangerous. And therefore, it's not just the ban, but also what it contributes to the precedence and the ideology and the system of banning things in a free country, which is of huge concern to me. So that is where I will sort of conclude my remarks.
Okay, well said. I
And
think, Omar, have you concluded or should I continue
yeah,
to
I
conclude?
have given my remarks.
Do you have anything to say?
One last thing. I'll just say one last
Okay,
thing.
Fahad.
Saransh, what is your view on, let's say, the Paytm, which has around 60% of its holdings with China?
I'll weigh on it. The thing is, when Paytm received substantial investments from China or even Zomato, or for that matter, a dozen other
Yeah.
start, we were not in a state. We were not in a state of conflict with China when those. So there is absolutely nothing that we can do regarding existing investments. Uh, if we can go ahead, take a different route for the future investment. And I don't think this TikTok ban was a standalone step. Nitin Gadkari announced that we are going to ban Chinese from bidding in certain road projects. We are going to ban Chinese from bidding in certain other infrastructure projects also. The Ministry of Power has declared that they are going to ban import of heavy machinery from China. So there will be
And some contracts on the railways have already been taken away, I guess.
exactly, and even the metro. I think the Meerut metro thing. I'm not sure about it, but they've taken that back from stake. So there will be a slew of measures. But as far as you said, that there is nothing substantial that India can do on the trade front. So by and large, it will be psyops, and China also will play this psychological game to its advantage. China also does not want anything beyond a border skirmish. China does not want and cannot fight a prolonged war, given that all its oil comes from the Indian Ocean, uh, very nearby Andamans. So they're also looking for fighting a prolonged war on this front. Ban, what exactly does this ban do? It red pills the people of India. It alerts them that we are here to fight a very long and a sustained battle against China on the misinformation front. So that is, in my opinion, another reason why I support this. But the thing is, it has alerted
I
the people of
really, I really
India.
don't think misinformation is something that the current government is opposed to. Rather, they use misinformation highly to further their
Emanating,
own propaganda.
I meant misinformation emanating from the rival states.
Yeah, but we can do it because
I always saw TikTok as a Trojan horse of CCP. that
It
could be
is. It is. Yeah.
used to foment trouble during a conflict, a riot, or at the time of war, which is why I was particularly against it from the time it was launched in India. I always had my doubts, and over the course of time, I've learned that there were those doubts, and that stand remains vindicated. So yes, TikTok and other
However,
such similar dubious apps.
Saransh, what is your opinion on other apps that have Shine.com, UC browser? We have talked about TikTok a lot, but this comprises of 58 other apps along with TikTok.
Most of them were malicious. Most of them had several security concerns, which majority of Indians had no idea about. Now they're reading about it. Now they'll get to know more about it. And none of uh, those apps which had no other alternative in the Play Store. So I don't think it is going to have a very long impact in that sense. And if you combine the revenue of all the other apps from India, it's still lesser than the revenue that TikTok generated from India, which is
Can
why
you
the
can you can you just tell me something about the dubiousness or the maliciousness or this data privacy issue with Shine.com? Is it in public knowledge?
No, I mean, I'll have to go in detail and then tell you. I mean, I'm again also not from the software background like you, but I'll have to tell you that I'll have to go in detail and tell you about how they collect data, and there is apparently no clarity on how they use it. Now, you may say that this is not just a Chinese app problem; this is a very standard problem. But then
Yeah,
again,
Cambridge Analytica. Yes.
yeah, but then again, I would say that those apps might be from countries who are not our neighbors, who are not our rivals at that moment. I know Facebook.
Which is to assume that everything bad exists only outside the Indian borders. I mean, if my government has data, my data in the form of Aadhaar or in the form of Arogya Setu app, it is no less dangerous to be
And even
compromised, no?
yeah, I do not disagree to that. I'm merely adding on to the fact that when an app from China does something malicious, it is to be taken on a priority basis. I am not in favor of Facebook or Twitter collecting the data and being and not answering certain questions regarding how they use the data. I also have my legit concerns regarding that, but I definitely put Chinese apps on a very high priority list because for the Chinese, these are not merely apps, these are the tools for engaging in psychological warfare. So I am definitely not well versed with how Americans use Facebook or Amazon or Twitter, but I'm very well versed with how the Chinese indulge in misinformation campaigns, how they indulge in their psyops, and this is precisely why I'm so vocal against TikTok. The day India goes to war with USA, which is very unlikely, I'll similarly bat against Facebook or Twitter.
I'll
Rajesh, you
just
want to add?
add one thing. We are talking
Can we
about a lot
conclude
of.
now, Fahad?
Yeah. I'll just add one thing. I mean, at a time when we are talking about this Atmanirbharta, as our Prime Minister had articulated it, I I think it's a grand illusion that the ideology of North Korea, which is called Juche, it started on a similar note that we have to be self-sufficient which is not practical in the present world. I mean, just like we articulated about various, we talked about various trade that we have with China. So just want to flag that up once, that it is a grand illusion that we are living in, and I think we have pretty much talked about everything else. So I've already concluded. I just wanted to add this point.
Okay. So thank you guys. Thank you both of you for bringing on the wonderful points, both of you. As far as okay, now I will put forth my understanding of what I have understood from this conversation and how do I present my conclusion to it. I and please do not respond to what I say because it will raise objections
Yes.
because we can't continue any further. We might have another conversation later time. You know, I completely, not completely, but in part agree with Saransh. My objection to my agreement to banning of TikTok is not about, my concern is not freedom of speech here because it is not because of freedom of speech it is banned. It is because it is For me, it's a national security matter. And for me, national security trumps individual freedom. Individual freedoms exist in a country before we even have a system of governance, before we choose a system of governance, like for example democracy or communism or monarchy or anything else. We have a country first, and then we choose a system of governance for that country. Now, irrespective of which form of governance a country chooses itself to govern with, its prime and topmost concern is national security and security of its own people. That is the only reason that government exists, whichever form it is in, right? Whether it's China, whether it's UK monarchy, whether it's uh, dictatorship, whether it's theocracy, whether it's democracy, all these forms of governance have the prime motive to protect their people. Whether they do it in a good way or bad way is a very different debate, but that is their prime objective, and that's why they exist. Now, so that is why for me, national security trumps individual freedom, and if certain individual freedoms have to be curtailed to protect national security, I'm okay with it. But why is it a national security matter? It is because, not because this app is like Facebook or Twitter, who are also collecting data. Yes, every app collects data. How they use that data and for what purpose, for what purposes, is where I agree with Saransh, that the China uses these are China state controlled apps, and they use it for psychological warfare. We, as in India, we have already discussed how inferior or how small we are as compared to China, in terms of military, economy, whatever. So, what are the other options we have? We don't have a military option. We don't have an economic option because we are inferior. So then, only option left with us is to fight the information warfare, where we are, if not at least little better balanced than as comparison to militarily or economically. In information warfare, India and China is more better balanced. That is where we can fight. Now, there's a message that I have to send to left liberals, and please don't react to it, Fahad. I have a
No, I'm
problem
not a
with,
leftist.
yeah, please.
I'm a liberal. Yes.
When opposition to CEA Citizenship Act started, it started with CEA being an anti-Muslim tool, which clearly dissipated, and the idea was debunked. But then the objection became CEA plus NRC, that when combined with NRC, it becomes an anti-Muslim tool. Soon that was also dissipated because every poor was supposed to have a problem showing the documents. So it didn't become an anti-Muslim; it turned into anti-poor thing, because so CEA plus NRC is anti-poor, and that's why the protests and the objections and kagas nahi dikhayenge and everything. Which there is another line of argument that emerged from all of those protests, which was that government, it is a government surveillance tool, that NRC is going to be a government surveillance tool, and government should have no right to our data. Now, this is where the connection comes in. My question to my objection, no, my not a question, not an objection. My concern with left liberals is that they are against their own government, their own democratic government having control over the data, but they are okay with Chinese government having control over their data.
Oh.
I want everybody to leave with that thought, and thank you everybody for choosing the red pill. In the 9th episode, we discussed TikTok ban and the other bans. Thank you everyone. Thank you Omar. Thank you Fahad. Thank
Rajesh
you.
bhai,
नहीं
I look
मुझे
forward to the
पता है तू
CAA
नहीं
debate.
ऑब्जेक्ट नहीं करना, ये
I
नेक्स्ट टाइम
look,
डिबेट
I
करेंगे
look,
अभी.
I look
मैंने
forward to
पहले
the
बोला था
CAA.
मत बोलियो कुछ.
It's a
Okay
very,
guys.
it's a dictatorship
Okay, let me
that you
stop
are
the
running
recording, then
here.
you can respond. Okay.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
can have a discussion. We can have a discussion on that later. Fahad, would you be you will be available for that? We
Sure,
can
sure,
have
sure.
a
Look
talk on
forward
that.
to it. Yes.
Yeah, we can have CA
Sure.
debate later, and you can write it down. You have a register in front of you. You can write it down, and we can continue this discussion later.
Rajesh bhai is not the one who brought it up.
One more
All
thing I
right.
want to add. There was a funny thought going on in my head when both of you were going back and forth about how TikTok behaves in India. The only thought in my head was, what if government bans Salman Khan? I mean, essentially what Fahad was arguing was that TikTok is Salman Khan of poor people, and Saransh was essentially making an elitist argument that no, people don't have a right to Salman Khan. So what?
Salman Khan is not a fundamental human right.
No, neither do apps are. So
Well, I was against the
basically
ban
the
of
point
Zakir Naik as
basically the
well.
point was that government
That
can choose what values to send to people.
that was a joke, yeah. Okay, thank you, Saransh, for joining in. Thank you, Fahad Zuberi, and we look forward to
Thank
more
you.
Thank you
conversations
very
like
much,
this in
guys. You
every.
guys made wonderful and brilliant point. Thank you.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.
Yeah.